In the quiet of dawn, the Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree. His gaze was serene, his posture unyielding. Disciples gathered around him, their hearts heavy with questions. Ananda, the most devoted, spoke first with trembling voice. Master, the world is filled with suffering. Why must we endure such pain? Is there a way to escape? The Buddha turned his calm eyes toward Ananda. Suffering arises not from the world, but from the mind resisting truth. The disciples exchanged glances. Puzzled yet intrigued, the Buddha continued, his voice as gentle as the morning breeze. To resist what is to create friction within. This friction feeds suffering, and suffering blinds the heart. Ananda hesitated, then asked, Master, how do we stop resisting? How do we find peace amidst chaos and suffering? The Buddha smiled softly, by accepting what is as it is. Acceptance transforms pain into understanding, fear into clarity. A young disciple, Mahanama, raised his hand. But Master, does acceptance mean surrendering to injustice or turning away from pain? Acceptance is not passive, the Buddha said. It is the courage to see clearly and act without attachment. The disciples listened intently as the sun's rays filtered through the leaves. Struggles stem from resistance to what is. Acceptance clears the path to serenity, Buddha said, his voice unwavering. Does the river resist the rocks? Or does it flow around them? It flows around them, Master, said Ananda, his voice filled with realization. Exactly, the Buddha replied. The wound of loss, of change, can lead us to great truths if we allow it, Buddha said. Rather than flee from it, sit with your wound, and it will teach you, Buddha instructed. Master, said Ananda, how can we become like the river? How can we flow without resistance? The Buddha closed his eyes for a moment, as if drawing wisdom from the stillness within. Then he spoke. To flow like the river, one must release attachment to outcomes. Suffering arises when we demand the river to change. What they taught me was this: suffering arises from craving and clinging, he explained. Craving for what we desire, clinging to what we fear to lose, Buddha elaborated. Pain is part of life's current. Resisting it only deepens its hold. The disciples fell silent, each pondering the depth of the Buddha's words. The forest seemed to echo his teachings. The path to peace, the Buddha said, is not in escaping pain, but in transforming our relationship with it. A disciple named Rahula asked, how do we transform this relationship? Master, how do we learn to embrace what we fear? The Buddha gestured toward a nearby tree. Rahula, what do you see when you look at that tree? Rahula answered, I see its branches, its leaves, and its stillness. Do you see its roots? The Buddha asked. No, Master, they are hidden beneath the earth, Rahula replied. The roots support the tree, the Buddha explained. Like roots, our fears are often hidden, yet they sustain our growth. Master, are you saying we should embrace fear, not avoid it? Rahula asked, his face thoughtful. Yes, the Buddha said. To embrace fear is to acknowledge its existence without letting it control your path. The disciples nodded, their minds opening to new insights. The Buddha's words were seeds planted in the fertile soil of their hearts. Ananda, the Buddha said, turning to his closest companion, tell me, what do you feel when the wind brushes your face? Ananda thought for a moment before replying. I feel its coolness, its gentleness, and its presence. Do you resist the wind? The Buddha asked, his gaze unwavering. No, Master, Ananda said. The wind is as it is. Resisting it would be futile. Then why, the Buddha said, his voice carrying the weight of truth, do we resist the winds of life? The disciples murmured among themselves, the simplicity of the question revealing profound complexities within. Master, a disciple named Upali asked, what if the winds of life bring storms? should we not prepare for them? Preparation is wise, the Buddha said. But resisting the storm only exhausts the spirit. Acceptance allows us to stand firm. The sun rose higher, casting golden light upon the gathering. The Buddha's teachings seemed to weave together like threads of silk. To love what is, the Buddha said, is to understand that life unfolds beyond our control. Peace lies in this understanding. The disciples bowed their heads, their hearts both heavy and light. They began to see the path illuminated by the Buddha's wisdom. The Buddha turned his gaze to the horizon, where the sun met the earth. Life is neither good nor bad. It simply is. The disciples absorbed this, their minds expanding with each word. The Buddha's teachings were both simple and infinite. Remember, the Buddha said, resistance is the root of suffering. Acceptance is the key to liberation and peace. When I was a prince in the palace, I too was burdened by the guilt of ignorance, Buddha shared. I lived in luxury while suffering surrounded me, unseen and unheard beyond the palace walls, Buddha explained. The Buddha closed his eyes once more, returning to the stillness within. The disciples followed, their hearts filled with quiet determination. And so the morning passed, with the Buddha teaching the art of loving what is. His voice echoed in their hearts. Another day, another lesson unfolded as the Buddha walked along a path shaded by ancient trees. Disciples followed him, their footsteps quiet. The air was thick with humidity, and the smell of earth lingered. The Buddha stopped by a murky pond. The disciples looked at the water, their expressions filled with unease. Master, this pond smells of decay, Ananda remarked. The Buddha bent down, dipping his hands into the mud. He held up a lotus bud, pristine and untainted. Ananda, he said softly, do you see how this lotus rises above the mud, untouched by its surroundings? The disciples nodded, their curiosity piqued. The Buddha continued, his voice steady and filled with warmth. Life is like this pond. Its surface may seem murky, but beneath lies the source of beauty and growth. A disciple named Kisa Gautami asked, Master, how can beauty exist in such filth? How can purity arise from something so impure? The Buddha smiled gently. Kisa, the mud is not impure. It is the birthplace of the lotus. The mud nurtures its beauty. Master, Kisa Gautami asked, are you saying suffering nurtures wisdom, just as mud nurtures the lotus? Indeed, the Buddha replied. Suffering teaches us resilience, and resilience leads us to clarity and wisdom. The disciples exchanged glances, their hearts stirred by the profundity of the Buddha's words. The villagers approached, their faces troubled. The Buddha turned to them with compassion. Why do you resist the mud of life? It is the soil for transformation. The villagers hesitated, then asked, Master, how can we rise above suffering when it seems to consume us completely? The Buddha knelt again, brushing his fingers against the pond's surface. By seeing the mud as an ally, not an enemy, a villager named Soma asked, Master, how do we find strength when surrounded by despair? How do we become like the lotus? Strength lies in embracing the mud. Soma, the Buddha said, resistance blinds us. Acceptance opens our eyes to possibility. The disciples and villagers listened intently, the murmur of the pond echoing the Buddha's wisdom. He spoke again. The lotus does not curse the mud. It transforms what is given into its beauty. Let me tell you about a village struck by famine and the impermanence of their suffering, Buddha began. The villagers came to me, their faces gaunt with hunger and despair, their hope diminishing. Buddha continued, Master, does this mean we should embrace our challenges instead of fleeing from them? Yes, Ananda, the Buddha said. To embrace challenges is to love what is, without resistance or judgment. The villagers sat by the pond, their burdens momentarily lifted. The Buddha's presence felt like the balm for their troubled souls. Master, a disciple named Sundari asked, What if the mud overwhelms us, and we feel incapable of rising above it? The Buddha lifted the lotus bud once more. Even in the darkest mud, life persists. The lotus seeks light and blooms. The villagers wipe their tears, their spirits rejuvenated by the Buddha's teachings. His words resonated deeply within their hearts. Master, Soma asked again, what if others mock us for our struggles, and their words weigh heavier than the mud? The Buddha turned to him, compassion radiating from his gaze. Soma, no one escapes the mud. Their words reflect their own struggles. Master, Kisa Gautami interjected, are you saying we should not judge others, even when they seem to harm us? Yes, the Buddha said. To judge others is to add mud to the pond. Compassion clears the water for all. The disciples and villagers nodded in agreement, their hearts opening to the wisdom that poured from the Buddha like sunlight. To love what is, the Buddha said, is to see the lotus amidst the mud, to transform suffering into beauty. The villagers thanked him, their burdens lightened. The Buddha gestured toward the horizon, where the pond met the sky. Life is neither clean nor dirty. It simply is, the Buddha said. The mud and lotus are two faces of existence. The disciples bowed deeply, their hearts awakening to the Buddha's teachings. His words were seeds planted in fertile minds. The Buddha continued walking, his disciples following closely. The pond remained behind, a symbol of life's wisdom and beauty. And so another day passed, with the Buddha teaching the art of loving what is, embracing the mud and blooming. Another day, another gathering. The Buddha stood before a blazing fire. The flames danced and flickered against the evening sky. The disciples watched the fire with fascination, their faces illuminated by its glow. Ananda stepped forward, his heart filled with wonder. Master, Ananda said, the flames seem so wild, yet they move with such grace. What lesson do they hold? The Buddha gestured toward the fire. Look closely, Ananda. Do the flames cling to their form, or do they dance freely? They dance freely, Master, Ananda replied, his voice steady but thoughtful. They accept the wind and move with it. The Buddha nodded, his expression serene. Exactly. The flames teach us the wisdom of impermanence and the beauty of acceptance. A young disciple, Sundari, raised her hand. Master, what does it mean to accept impermanence? How can we live without holding on to anything? To accept impermanence, the Buddha said, is to understand that clinging leads to suffering. Freedom lies in embracing change without fear. The disciples exchanged glances, their hearts stirred by the profundity of the Buddha's teachings. He spoke again. The flames embrace the winds and dance without resistance. To love what is to dance with life's currents. Rahula stepped forward, his gaze fixed on the fire. Master, what if the winds bring storms? How do we endure amidst the chaos? Endurance, the Buddha said, comes from inner stillness. Like the fire, remain rooted in truth, and you will weather any storm. The disciples absorbed his words, their minds opening to new insights. Another disciple asked, Master, how can we remain true to your teachings amidst temptation and distraction? Buddha answered, by observing your thoughts and desires without attachment. Temptation is like a cloud, transient, powerless unless you grasp it. Soma, balance the fire within by embracing its nature, not suppressing it. Ananda looked at the flames, his heart heavy with questions. Master, does acceptance mean surrendering to suffering or ignoring the pain of others? Acceptance is not passive, the Buddha said. It is the courage to act without attachment, rooted in compassion and clarity. The disciples nodded, their spirits awakening to the depth of the Buddha's teachings. His voice carried the weight of timeless wisdom. The flames dance, unyielding yet fluid, the Buddha said. To love what is to move through life like the flames. Kisa Gautami stepped forward, her eyes filled with curiosity. Master, what if we fear the flames? How do we overcome the fear within? Fear is part of life's fire, the Buddha said. Do not flee from it. See it clearly, and it will lose its hold. The disciples and villagers gathered closer, their hearts seeking solace in the Buddha's presence. The fire illuminated their faces and souls. Master, Sundari asked, how do we transform fear into strength? How do we learn to love even the things we dread? The Buddha gestured toward the fire. Sundari, the flames transform what they touch. Fear, when embraced, becomes the fuel for wisdom. A villager named Soma bowed deeply. Master, we are troubled by loss and despair. How can we find light amidst the darkness? Loss is life's shadow, the Buddha said. Do not resist it. The shadows highlight the brightness of the flames. The villagers wiped their tears, their hearts uplifted by the Buddha's teachings. His words resonated deeply within their spirits. Master, Sundari interjected, how do we find joy when the winds of life extinguish our flames and leave us cold? The Buddha lifted his gaze toward the starry sky. Even in the coldest night, the spark remains. Nurture it, and light will return. The disciples bowed deeply, their hearts awakening to the Buddha's teachings. His wisdom was like the fire, both radiant and transformative. The flames dance freely, without fear of extinguishment, the Buddha said. To love what is to find beauty in impermanence. Rahula gazed into the fire, his heart filled with clarity. Master, does this mean the flames teach us to accept both loss and renewal? Yes, the Buddha said. Loss and renewal are two faces of life's truth. Accept them, and peace will follow. The villagers thanked the Buddha, their burdens lightened. He gestured toward the horizon, where the fire's glow met the night sky. Life is neither constant nor chaotic. It simply is, the Buddha said. The fire's dance reflects the truth of existence. The disciples followed him into the night, their hearts burning with the fire of understanding. His words stayed with them like embers, and so another day passed, with the Buddha teaching the art of loving what is, dancing with life's flames. Another day ends, Buddha said, his voice tinged with both the finality and the continuity of time. And yet, the journey continues, for truth is a path without end. Thank you for watching. Buddha's teachings are always with you. Subscribe to our channel and we will see you in the next video.